In histories, Herodotus does cover a lot of diplomatic intrigues amongst mostly Greek city-states, but also between Greece and Persia, the Greece city-states and Persia, Persia and Babylon, Persia and Egypt, Lydia and Persia, like all these empires that were in that region and the city-states on the European side. So it does describe those diplomatic going-ons and intrigues and conflicts and strategies and everything else that goes with diplomacy or the relationship between empires or states or countries. Now, in one in a section of the book is especially after Persia has come to Europe, has conquered much of Greece, put it under their rule, and especially during the rule of Darius the Great. It gives us this scenario, or it describes this happening of the relationship between the Sparta in particular, and Athens and Corinth, and of course Miletus, and these other Greek city-states. Now, Herodotus goes into a tangent again, and this is something I've mentioned many times, that while reading the histories by Herodotus, you have to be aware of these tangents, because sometimes they happen in such a way that they confuse you, such that you don't realize that he has stopped talking of what is happening in the moment, and he has gone way back to give you this background information. And those tangents are great because they give you information, but they can also confuse you. So here is another tangent. He goes into telling us about the relationship between Sparta, Athens, and the other city-states. Now, there was a time when generally the Greeks did not like tyrants, people ruled by force. They preferred republics, kind of republics, where the person ruling was kind of like answerable to the people. But there were times when they found themselves with tyrants, many times in fact. So there was a time when Athens came under the rule of a tyrant by the name of Hippias. Hippias was very, he was ruthless, we can say. And of course, the Athenians, they didn't like him, but they had no option. In a previous video, I told you of this family that used the temple to get power. In fact, that family was going against Hippias. They wanted to remove Hippias from power, and they succeeded. So after Hippias leaves power, in fact, this family is a family of a guy called Cleomenes. Cleomenes was a member of that family. He was like the head of the family. They were banished by Hippias. They went and they built a temple close to Athens, and everybody who came from Athens to consult the oracles in the temple was told that the gods are saying they remove, they save or give, or they free Athens from the tyrant. So in the end, they organized a revolt, and they got support from someone. They got support from Cleomenes, who was the ruler of Sparta. Sparta was by then a very powerful city-state. Cleomenes was not a tyrant. He was like ruling on behalf of the people, and in fact Sparta had two people ruling, Cleomenes and somebody else. That's how they always appointed two people to be in leadership. And so Cleomenes was one of the two, but he was like the more dominant one of the rulers of Sparta during this time. And so Cleomenes got support from Cleomenes. Cleomenes sends him an army, and they go, and that army joins, of course, the Athenians, who were revolting against Hippias, and they get rid. And Hippias was to be killed at that point, but he wasn't killed In fact, Herodotus tells us that it is most likely that even with the support of Cleomenes and the Spartans, the Cleomenes and his family and everybody else could not have succeeded in removing Hippias from power. What happened though is, at one time during the siege, children of the family of Hippias were captured as they were being moved from one place to another and taken. They were like taken. What is the word? Like they were abducted. Basically, I don't think that's it, but we can use that for now. They were abducted and then they were used as a negotiating chip. Now Hippias was told, you leave power and we don't harm the kids and we let you, give you a passage, you disappear. If you continue resisting, then you're going to kill these kids, and yet to be like, okay, you're not going to kill the kids, I'm giving her power. He gives that power, he's given a passage and he goes to some other land. Now Hippias is gone. Now Cleomenes and another guy are picked to rule Athens. And at this time, they are in good relationship with Cleomenes and the Spartans. Now, but once they get to power, Cleomenes and this other guy, and mostly Cleomenes, who was like the more dominant now in Athens, like Cleomenes was more dominant in Sparta. Cleomenes kind of like wanted complete freedom, like he believed in what they were fighting for, like they were fighting for Athens to be free and for the people to rule again. But it turns out that's not what Spartans had in mind. It seems like Cleomenes and Spartans were interested in having, what is the name? Like a puppet guy for them to rule Athens. And so once Cleomenes is in power with this other co-ruler, they kind of like start doing things that the Spartans don't like. Cleomenes is not happy about. They seem like they are breaking away from Sparta. So now Cleomenes decides to organize another revolt. He decides he wants to come and attack Athens and change the leadership, and he wants to put in place another guy known as Isagoras. He wants to put Isagoras in power because he thinks Isagoras is going to serve the interest of Sparta better than Cleomenes was doing. Cleomenes seemed more concerned with doing what was right by Athenians. Now, he organizes this resistance, we can call it. It was not a resistance really, because Athenians were with Cleomenes and their leaders, so it was not really a resistance. What it was an external attack. They wanted to come with an army and with a few Athenians like Isagoras, who of course were seeing an opportunity to get to power. And so, but Sparta realized, Cleomenes, the ruler of Sparta, realized that he wasn't going to succeed by himself, or Sparta could not succeed by themselves to go to Athens and remove Cleomenes and the other guy from power. So he decides to go talk to the other city-states to try to form an alliance. Miletus, Corinth, and others. And these others initially agreed to join the alliance. And I think there are some that refuse to join the alliance. And they are organizing themselves to attack Athens. Now, something happened at that point. The other guy who rules Sparta, because I told you that Sparta and Athens now are having each like two people ruling together. The other guy who rules besides Cleomenes does not like this. He's like, no, we are not going to do that. So he kind of removes himself. And then other city-states see that and they remove themselves from the alliance. And then the Corinths were also about to remove themselves. Now, Cleomenes calls this meeting of the allies, if you can call it that. And he's trying to persuade them like they should go and attack Athens. And for maybe give them other reasons, because now the interest he wanted to take care of in Athens were for Sparta. Maybe give these other guys other reasons why they need to join them in this mission. Now, but the Corinths were so uncomfortable with one thing, because one thing was very clear. Cleomenes wanted to impose a tyrant on Athens, the guy is Agras. And the Corinths were not comfortable, because they are like, we Greeks don't like tyrants. Why do you want us to put a tyrant to rule over Athens? Cleomenes had, in another, Herodotus just explained to us that one of the reasons why Cleomenes wanted a tyrant in Athens is because after Cleomenes had come to power with the other guy, Athens was growing in power. It was growing in power. And it seems like Cleomenes was feeling that Athens was going to be a threat to Sparta, and he wanted to control that. So, in fact, one of the reasons he wanted to attack was also to make Athens not become a threat to the power of Sparta in the region. So the Corinthians are not comfortable with that. They are not, specifically, they are not comfortable with the idea of putting a tyrant over Athens. In fact, in the meeting, their leader, their spokesperson, tells Cleomenes, you propose to put down free government in cities of Greece and set up tyrannies in their place. Then he tells him, if you think it is desirable to have cities under despotic rule, begin by putting a tyrant over yourselves, and then establish despot in other states. Because Cleomenes wants to impose a tyrant on Athens. But Sparta is not ruled by a tyrant, and the Corinthians are not comfortable. They are like, you people are not under a tyrant, but you think it's okay to impose a tyrant on Athens. So they were like, we are not comfortable with that. And this person goes ahead now to give a story of how they Corinthians suffered under a tyrant, and they tell of a story of this guy who the tyrant used to be called Cypselus and his son Periander. And they say how Cypselus came to power. There was this young lady who used to call Labda in Corinth, and Labda was like a person living with some form of disability, so it was very difficult for her to find somebody to marry her. But then over time, somebody came along, a guy called Aetion, and he took her as a wife. But they lived for a while without a child. And then Aetion one time went to the temple to talk to the oracles and ask them why they were not having a child. And when he walked into the temple, the oracle said, he's going to be a father of a tyrant. Basically, that's the message. Those were not the exact words, but interpreting what he was told is basically, the child you two are going to have is going to be a tyrant of Corinth. And he left, but this message got out to the people of Corinth. And when those people heard this, they were scared, and they decided they were going to watch this couple very closely, and any child they give birth to, they were going to kill. And one time they hear Labda has given birth to a baby boy, Cypselus. His name was not Cypselus then. Cypselus came from what happened after he was born. They hear Labda as a child, and they go, 10 men are appointed to go and kill the baby. Then they say the first person to hold the baby will kill it. And they go to the house of Aetion, and Labda is in the house with the baby, and they knock, and then Labda thinks they've come to say hi to the baby or something like that, and she hands over the baby to them. And the first person who was given the baby was supposed to strangle or kill the baby, basically. But as he held the baby, he looked at the baby smiled at him, and that made him uncomfortable killing the baby. And so he hands over the baby to the next guy. All of them hold this baby, but they don't have the courage to kill the baby. Anyways, they give the baby back to their mom, and they stand aside and they start arguing, like, they start blaming, especially the first guy. He was supposed to kill the baby. And as they are arguing, Labda is listening. She's somewhere listening to them. And she goes, she hides the baby inside a container for keeping corn, and it was called Cypselus, and that's why he got the name Cypselus. And they came back looking for the baby. They did not find the baby. They went back to the council and lied that they had killed the baby. But Cypselus grew up, and so Herodotus doesn't tell us how, but he became leader of Corinth, and he became a tyrant, and he terrorized people. He killed people he thought were a threat to him. When he died, his son Periander became the ruler, and he was even worse than the dad. Periander would kill anybody he thought threatened. Even if he imagined that you were a threat to him, he will come for you and kill you with your family or banish you. And Herodotus tells us now, this is a story that is being told by the Corinthians in this meeting where they are deciding whether to attack Athens and impose a tyrant. And this story goes that one time this Periander sent a messenger to consult somebody, a tyrant of Miletus, and a person who used to be known as Thrasybulus, asking him what's the best way to rule in such a way that you never lose power, basically. And the messenger goes, and this tyrant of Miletus doesn't give the messenger a message. He takes him to the field of corn. We call it maize here. And he's walking around and he's cutting any maize plant that is taller than the rest. He cuts them, he cuts them, he cuts them. And the messenger comes back, and Periander asks him, so what did he tell you? And he's like, he didn't say anything. He took me to the field and he was cutting down all tall maize plants, and he got the message. He interpreted it to mean, if you want to rule, look at everyone you think is better than the rest, kill them. And that's what he did. So he was very brutal. He was very cruel. That's Periander, the son of Cypselus. So the Corinthians suffered in the hands of these two people until these two people were. He even says that there was a time that Periander made all women of Corinth to walk naked, because somehow his wife had died, a lady known as Melissa, and he had a dream, and she told him she was naked or something like that. He decides to make all women of Corinth naked. And so that was the story that the Corinthians, or their spokesperson, gave to the meeting. And after that, everybody else who was in the meeting said they were not going to join Sparta in attacking Athens, and that campaign ended there.